G'day guys and gal. The title of this video isn't exactly a hot or unique take. Tyberos is the girthiest space marine there is. But beyond just seeing this famous fan art of him and hearing about how he curb stomps Xenos and heretics on the daily, I bet you don't actually know why he is such a powerful, terrifying force of nature. I assume you haven't actually read the parts of the lore where he goes to town on Tyranids or terrorizes an entire Space Marine chapter into submission. I bet you don't even know exactly how big this dude actually is. I've also realized I haven't made a dedicated video on Tyberos yet, which is a massive fumble on my part. Let's rectify that. Before we get started, I am back at it with another Tacticus sponsored segment. Turns out I was able to suck so many of you into this addictive 40k mobile game void that they renewed my contract. I'm not a mobile gamer, but god damn Tacticus slaps. My addiction is near crippling to this damn game and I'll explain why. First, there is actual strategy involved. It's not just one of those idle play itself games. The difference between you creaming a battle or getting annihilated comes down to your positioning, when you use your abilities, what team comp you use, and so on. It's so satisfying completing the final campaign missions due to a new strategy. On top of campaign, there are guild raid boss fights, survival against wave after wave of Tyranids, as well as regular special events and more. The coolest part is that you can do this with characters from the 40k lore spread across 14 factions with more on the way. Characters like Margan Ra, Marnius Kalga, Azrael, Abaddon, Shadow Sun, Typhus, and dozens more. So to get started, use my link below as well as code Majorkill69 to get a cheeky bonus. Existing players can also use that code, not just new players. Cheers to Tacticus for sponsoring this video. Today we'll go over Tyberos' highlights from the lore as well as what actually makes him such a monster compared to other Space Marines. Now let's get into it. The first thing that sticks out is just how massive Tyberos is. There's a reason why there's weight classes in combat sports, and Tyberos is a great example of that. Due to a combination of his genetics combined with the high mutation rate of the Space Shark's gene seed, Tyberos grew to be absolutely massive, larger than any other current living Space Marine. There's a bit of confusion regarding just how big he is, as this fan art, no matter how awesome, is still made by a fan, not by GW. Some people think that he is slightly taller than a normal Space Marine, whilst others think he is the size of a Primarch if not bigger. The lore doesn't pull out a ruler and measure his cock or anything. However, it clearly states that he stands a head taller than his elite Terminator guards, who would be taller than most other Space Marines to begin with, as Space Sharks were notoriously large Marines. However, his increased height was only a small aspect of his overall girth. The Magos who saw Tyberos and scanned him had a brief sensory malfunction, as his logic engines couldn't comprehend that he was looking at a living being. It thought he was a statue. He specifically noted that Tyberos made his own bodyguards around him look like children, which would imply that despite a moderate height advantage, his bulk would have been massively larger. Normal Terminators are around 8 to 9 feet tall, with the elite Space Shark Terminators being closer to the 9-foot mark. Adding the full head of height on top of that puts Tyberos in the 10-foot plus category, which does fall short of the Primarch's height of 12 to 14 feet, however his bulk would match if not exceed theirs. Other descriptions in the lore always make a big point of talking about how massive he is. Stuff like how his heavily modified armor consumes a shitload of energy, or how his sheer size radiates a sense of dread for everyone in the area. So yes, we can comfortably say that Tyberos is the largest Space Marine in the current setting, with all the strength and power bonuses that would entail. As for his war gear, his armor isn't normal Terminator armor, it's heavily modified with extremely advanced armor pieces to be able to fit him. The Magos who scanned him noted that his armor was immense and had cliff-like plates. He also noted that every inch of Tyberos was covered in the most advanced, rare, and hallowed war plate that he had ever seen. This could imply that Tyberos' armor is modified with dreadnought plate to account for his bulk, or that he simply had most of his armor custom made for him. Either way, the dude is a walking fortress of death. By far the coolest part of him is his Power Claw Chain Sword Power Fist combo. It's fucking wild that he has the 3-in-1. Its brutality only matched by its sheer awesomeness. The claws are called Hunger and Slake, and are theorized to be the modified form of Corvus Corax's siege gauntlets. That's right, Tyberos probably uses Primarch weapons. After all, Space Shark gene seed can be traced back to the Raven Guard. Obviously, some fuck shit has happened since then, including the potential merging of Raven Guard and Night Lord gene seed, but they still have a connection to Corvus, so it would be a pretty awesome relic. The best part is that Tyberos isn't this booming, loud, slow juggernaut. He speaks in near whispers and is actually really stealthy. He's able to move extremely extremely quickly and quietly, so you might catch a massive shadow rushing at you in your peripherals before you get absolutely shredded. So we know he's got the size, the stealth, and the war gear, but what has he actually done with it? What are the moments from the lore where you say, holy fucking shit, Shark Daddy fucks? For thousands of years, the space sharks were rarely seen within the Imperium, choosing to spend their time traveling around the deep void of the galaxy, taking on threats from beyond the Milky Way. Just imagine that for a second. You probe the Milky Way to determine what life is in it, and the first thing you encounter is Tyberos and his chain lightning power claws. Quite the first impression. However, when a bunch of previously loyal Space Marine chapters were misled into defecting from the Imperium, the Space Sharks returned to Imperial space and pledged themselves to crush the traitors. Even the loyalists were confused and kind of scared, but the ancient credentials of the Space Sharks checked out, hence they were unleashed, brutalizing the fuck out of the Mantis warriors. The final assault by the Space Shark Terminators is what low-key ended the Bad Dab War, with Tyberos likely leading that assault. Now unfortunately, most Tyberos lore is more what people say or think, rather than actual play-for-play scenes of what he does, so we will need to fill in the gaps a bit. It would be fair to say that Tyberos' sheer power meant that he was more than a match for Space Marine dreadnoughts and would readily engage them in melee combat, tearing them to shreds in the process. After all, he was only a bit smaller than them and 10 times faster, not to mention he easily had the strength and war gear to rend them open. His extremely advanced tactical dreadnought armor would also have meant he could absorb some punishment that they would dish out. Overall, this is pretty obscene to consider. Pretty much every other instance of Space Marine vs Dreadnought lore talks about it like a Dark Souls boss fight. The smaller warrior dodging hails of gunfire and death to only eventually win due to the intervention of squad mates or their Primarch or some shit. Tyberos just squaring up and doing it himself is fucking nuts. Once again, I'm just spitballing here a bit. There isn't a scene from the lore of him clapping a dreadnought that I know about, but GW has pretty much said to use your imagination with characters like Tyberos and Asterian Malok when it comes to how disgustingly overpowered they are. However, there was one example of Tyberos being unleashed in the lore that I can talk about in great detail. As the Space Sharks patrol the edge of the galaxy, they often run into Tyranids who are trying to make their way in. During one such engagement, a Tyranid boarding pod landed on the Space Shark ship. Tyranid boarding pods are a bit of a problem as they can act as a mobile spawner. Tyberos solo charged the pod, massacring 4 Tyranid warriors in a blink of an eye before then crawling into the pod and killing the rest of the Nids on board before then killing the pod itself, all with pretty minimal effort. I mean, the lore literally talks about how after single-handedly stopping a Tyranid infestation, Tyberos is extremely nonchalant and acts like it was as easy as cleaning up your asshole with a bidet. It's also important to note that Tyranid warriors are comparable to Space Marines in terms of strength, skill, and speed, with them being known to kill Space Marines in duels quite regularly, so for Tyberos to cut through them like they were a bunch of special ed kids is crazy. The only other Imperials who can kill like that are Primarchs, Custodes, or Eversor assassins. Tyberos genuinely seems to have no weakness. He doesn't rampage around, spinning his hands around his body like kids do when they think they're unbeatable. Every strike is said to be incredibly precise, with him being described as a blur in combat, especially with his hands. If you do manage to hit him, the dude has the thickest armor in the galaxy. It ain't doing shit. I wouldn't be surprised if the Space Sharks threw him at Tyranid Carnifexes as some kind of anti-large monster killer. Before the Carnifex would finish its roar, Tyberos would have already ripped it to shreds. It is said that when Tyberos fights, he becomes a force of nature. If you need any more convincing of his combat prowess, he would also lead his first company into battle as the Vanguard spear tip every time, meaning he was pretty much always the first to engage in combat out of his entire chapter, whilst also being the biggest target in his chapter. During the Bad Dab War, he and his first company turned multiple traitor ships into charnel houses. He would have had to fight through traps, choke points, and enemy Astartes, yet he is still very much alive and well. Well, maybe not well, after all his face is described as a pale thing with missing flesh and bone protruding from the skin, not to mention how black his eyes are, but it's not a beauty contest, so if anything, that just makes him more awesome. All of this does make you wonder, is Tyberos the most powerful Space Marine in the setting? After all, I don't really see any reality where Dante, Azrael, or Manius are able to beat him, especially if he becomes a Primaris and actually ends up the size of a Primarch. It doesn't matter how cool you are or how skillful you are, if a gigantic Hulk runs at you at breakneck speed and then slashes at you with lightning claw power fist chainsword arms faster than you can blink, you're gonna be pretty fucking dead. In saying that, I wouldn't say Tyberos is the most powerful. Asterian Malok could probably take him, as could Abaddon. Psykers like Mephiston and Ahriman would also more than likely be able to overcome him. In saying that, if you ran those fights 100 times, Tyberos would certainly win numerous times against any of those warriors. Overall, an absolute beast that is criminally underused in the lore and seriously needs a new tabletop model. Also, GW, you really need to give us some more action scenes. Scenes where Tyberos is unleashed against enemy space marines, a Carnifex or a Dreadnought, so we can really gauge the girth of this boy. So much of him is also ambiguous. What is his actual size? What is his armor modified with? Is it just enlarged Terminator plate, or is the theory about it using modified Dreadnought components correct? I'm all for a bit of mystery, but you can't just tease my balls like this. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then subscribe, or Tyberos will tear you a new asshole. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.